Hello friends, this is Mike from Wright. And this is the explanations video for SAT 2's reading section, passage number 2, question 17. Alright, here we go. Which choice best supports the author's claim that there is common ground shared by the different approaches to ethics described in the passage? Now, this is a citing textual evidence question, and it's one of the rare ones where there's no question that it attaches to, it's just a question all on its own. And on these questions, the prompts is really important to look at because these quotes are supposed to be supporting a claim. And it's as though we had a question above this citing textual evidence question, and we just know the right answer to that question above it. Here, the claim that we're supporting is that there is, and we know it's the author's claim, there is common ground shared by the different approaches to ethics. Now, in a lot of other citing textual evidence videos, I say that the best way to answer these quote question pairs is to answer the first question without even looking at the quotes, to have such a good understanding of the passage that you can be like, oh, this is the claim that's right, here's the quote that supports it, and then you just go look and find that quote in the second question. There's an equivalent approach to answering this question as well that mirrors that. And that is to think about where the claim, here this prompt is telling us that there is this claim somewhere in the passage the author says there is common ground shared by the different approaches to ethics. And then think in terms of your understanding of the meta summary of the passage, the structure of the passage, where would that be? Where would the author say, by the way guys, there's lots of common ground between these three approaches? Alright, I think a couple ways of thinking about that. The first is the way that the time the author would say that would have to be after the author has already described the three approaches. It's unlikely that the author is going to say, there's common ground between these three approaches. What approaches? Oh, don't worry about those approaches. I'll explain those later. You know, oftentimes what you want to do is describe the three approaches and then come in with your commentary. Now, you might remember this from this literal passage. The structure of this passage was the author came in and made some introductory comments, described three different approaches to analyzing ethics in economics, and then came in with his commentary, and that's where we find the quote about common ground. Now, hopefully you can literally just remember. This question I think you ought to aspire to answer this way, where you remember the part where the author said there was common ground between these three approaches, because it happens in the first paragraph where the author is actually saying things in his own voice. The author says these three approaches can coexist in this passage. In this paragraph, he gives an example of fair trade coffee, and the point he's making, the commentary he's making on these three approaches is that there are situations where all three of them can be happy. And then straight up he says, common ground like this suggests that even without agreement on where ethics applies, ethical economics is still possible. Now, it might be that you literally remember the words common ground, and this is one of those situations where there are tons and tons of wrong answer choices where you get tempted into it because you remember some obscure phrase and you feel proud of yourself for going there, but that obscure phrase is used in the wrong way. This is not one of those times. If you remembered the common ground phrase and you got straight to line 64, and you found that claim, that's fantastic. I mean, that takes you right to the right answer. Common ground like this suggests that even without agreement on where ethics applies, ethical economics is still possible. He's literally saying there's common ground. And actually, this is interesting. This sentence, common ground like this, where is it? Oh my god. Come on, here we go. Common ground like this kind of points its way upward, right? Common ground like this. Like what? Like the common ground I just described, and that's common ground like in the fair trade coffee example, where buying fair trade coffee is going to have good consequences, so Adam Smith is happy because he thinks ethics is all about consequences. It's going to be virtuous, so Aristotle's happy because he thinks ethics is all about character and virtue. And it's also the right way to act, so the actions people are happy. All three viewpoints are happy. That's the common ground we're talking about. So the best way to do this question is to have good enough notes and have a good enough understanding of the passage that you get here on your own. You either remember the phrase common ground, or you think critically about the meta structure, the meta summary of the passage, And remember, okay, like the author probably makes a claim like this in the part where they're making commentary, and they probably make commentary after the whole describing the three viewpoints thing. Either of those approaches, or kind of a combo of the two, will take you to this paragraph all on your own. Now, that's not the only way to do it. There's always plan B, and plan B is to go through each of the quotes and sort of ask yourself, does this quote provide word for word, ironclad support for the claim that there is common ground shared by the different approaches to ethics? Now, this is a claim about all of the different approaches to ethics, which is going to be important in each of these answer choices. Let's look at A as an example. Answer choice A says, and actually I guess let's just read the quote. Answer choice A is lines 11 through 12, from there to decision. So here's 11 there. There are different views on where ethics should apply when someone makes an economic decision. Now again, really important not to read any more or less than the full quote, starting from there, ending with decision. And here the quote says, there are different views on where ethics should apply when someone makes an economic decision. This quote is just about differences. There are different approaches. So it does provide some support for part of the claim. It provides support for the fact that there are different approaches, which is part of the claim. The claim says there's common ground shared by the different approaches. So hey, different approaches, right? But it doesn't provide support for the entire claim. And in fact, it highlights the differences between the different approaches, whereas the claim that we want, the claim that the author is talking about, is a claim that there is common ground that these approaches share, and there's nothing about that in this quote. That's why answer choice A is wrong. On to answer choice B, lines 47 through 50, that's over here. And it's from to advertisements. So we got this from here and advertisements right here, so let's read this quote. From this perspective, some things are right, some wrong. We should buy fair trade goods. We shouldn't tell lies in advertisements. Now, let's think about the context of this claim. What is this claim? From this perspective. What perspective? Well, it's perspective number 3. It's viewpoint number 3. And viewpoint number 3 is the part where people think that ethics is about actions. This is an approach where you can root ethics in actions. Ethics is a list of do's and don'ts. Don't break promises. Don't punch babies. That kind of thing. Okay? So from this perspective, some things are right and some are wrong. We should buy fair trade goods. We shouldn't tell lies in advertisements. This is a sentence whose role is just to describe viewpoint number 3. It makes no mention of viewpoints number 1 or 2, and it tells us nothing about how viewpoints number 1 and 2 would what they would think about rightness and wrongness in fair trade goods, for example, and in advertisements. Another way of putting that is that answer choice B isn't the author's commentary on the various viewpoints. Answer choice B is just the author describing one of the viewpoints, and that doesn't have to do with common ground. It just has to be like, viewpoint number 3 says this. All right, answer choice C, the rightness, we're going to skip over that and come back to it until we get through the wrongness of answer choice D, which is lines 75 through 77. From we to facts, so from here to here. We behave like a herd. We fear losses more than we hope for gains. Rarely can our brains process all the relevant facts. Now, again, we can use our notes to think about the meaning of what this claim is. Why was this claim written? And here it's support for the author's / John Stuart Mill / most people's claim that real people are irrational, that the fact that economists assume that people are entirely rational and selfish, that thought is a parody, that thought is a fiction, and we can never make purely rational decisions. These are the main ideas where the sentence is attached to. And the main point of this sentence, we behave like a herd, we fear losses, we can't process all the facts. The main point of this sentence is to demonstrate that humans are whack. We aren't rational beings. Now, this isn't a commentary on the viewpoints themselves. In fact, this is the author sort of, after having made his comments in the paragraph above, this is the author bringing up something entirely new. Another way of putting it, there's viewpoint 1, viewpoint 2, viewpoint 3, and then there's the author's comments on those three things, saying these three things can play nicely together. And then the author sort of puts that aside for a paragraph and says, by the way, I think that humans are irrational, and that transitions into the author's talk about how psychology might help us answer these questions with respect to this new idea. So it's not a commentary on the three viewpoints. It certainly doesn't suggest that the three viewpoints share common ground, because it's not discussing them at all. And what matters is that it's a good match with the claim being that common ground is shared by the different approaches to ethics. Now, looking at the rightness of answer choice C, this is lines 59 through 64, and it might not be the sentence you expect. It's not the sentence that says common ground like this suggests that. That's lines 64 through whatever, 66. Here it's asking us to start earlier, and it's asking us to start here and to go from take to market. So where's market? What, it's line 64? Oh, this is a pretty long quote. Way down to here. From take to market. All right, let's go. Take fair trade coffee, coffee that is sold with a certification that indicates the farmers and workers who produced it were paid a fair wage. For example, take fair trade coffee, for example. Buying it might have good consequences, be virtuous, and also be the right way to act in a flawed market. I think one of the hardest parts of this question is that it's easy to think this quote doesn't say anything about common ground explicitly. Common ground is outside the quote. And it also doesn't mention any of the viewpoints explicitly, in the sense that it doesn't name Adam Smith or talk directly about the viewpoints. It does, however, touch explicitly upon the ideas that each of the viewpoints embrace. Here, I'm using that vocab word, embrace. These viewpoints are, Adam Smith's viewpoint is that ethics is about consequences. Aristotle's viewpoint is that ethics is virtue, it's about character. And the actions viewpoint is that you need to focus on whether something is the right or wrong way to act. So even though this sentence might not seem that way, the point of this sentence is that here's an example of fair trade coffee where it's a thing that you can do, or it's a part of the free market where buying it might satisfy all three viewpoints. All three viewpoints will be happy when you're doing fair trade coffee stuff. The author, and then it's important that the author then says, and this is, even though this is outside of the quote, it's okay because it says the common ground like this. So here, even though it's outside the quote, the author elsewhere in the passage, like right next to it, says common ground like this. This is the common ground. There's a part of the passage that's like, check that part out. That's the common ground part. Look up there, right? Common ground like that. So all of those are reasons for the rightness of answer choice C. It is the part of the passage that directly addresses the different approaches to ethics. Even if not by name, it addresses their ideas. And it's explicitly about the fact that they can all play nicely together, the fact that they share common ground. That's it for this question. I'll see you guys in the next one.